Hello and welcome to Ideas with Diana on this February 1st, 2021. For today's show, we're able to have Lon back as I can have one guest in the apartment. Um, one topic we were planning to talk about today is the stock market with this one, the GameStop stock, and even like this one Schwab stock where you can buy partial shares of stock for $5. So, Lon, did you want to give what you were telling me before the show on this one thing you saw on Charles Schwab about the $5 thing?
Well, yeah, it was more of an advertisement on TV, and I was a little taken back by how minimum that might be, because in the last year or so, the market to get back into high producing stocks is pretty astronomical.
Yes.
So, I mean, when this came about in the last, 2-3 weeks.
Exactly.
It kind of piqued my interest again because I felt, well, there's another way of getting into the market, and that's called the back door.
Right.
And Schwab was, I guess, part of it, and I'm sure there'll be many others that will join them.
Oh, sure. And
Yeah.
what the Charles Schwab thing is basically like you can buy shares of Apple, Amazon, other popular stocks for $5, for partial. What you're doing is actually what happens. You're actually working like in a pool. They have a pool of stocks, and what happens? Each of you put money in a pool, and basically, so when you sell your stock, you're actually selling your share in the pool, not actually owning the stock. But the thing is, you get the benefit of it. Basically, you get the equity and everything else.
Yeah.
And so when you do sell it, you can get a profit back from what you sold it, from what you bought it. But the thing to remember though, whenever you do buy stock, again, I'm from the Austrian school. I believe in the Austrian school of Milton Friedman of investing, Glass-Steagall Act, and everything else. Do not buy on margin. Do not buy on margin. Do not buy on margin. Buy with your own cash. And if you like I used the analogy, if you can afford to throw $5 in the street and not worry about it, go ahead, buy it. Or if you can afford $5 and you're not going to go on every day looking at the stock index to see how much your stock ticked up or ticked down, buy it. But if you're going to watch it every day, no, that's not for you. Christmas Club, Savings Club, Double E Savings Bond, that's for you. But if you know just to watch it, just go along with it, then that's for you in that though. But you got to, because remember, the stock market is not always a straight line. Sometimes it goes like this, down, then it comes back up, down, and goes back up like this, and Charles Schwab's. I haven't worked with Charles Schwab, but I've heard so far. I haven't heard anything negative about them. The thing is, when you do sign up for the stock company, you have to put so much money in. Like it used to be basically $500. I'm not sure whether it's with Charles Schwab, but I know with Ameritrade, you can open an account for $0. And actually fund it basically incrementally. If you go, because TD Ameritrade and Scott Trade are the same company now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lon, why don't you mention about the time you bought a share of stock through your bank, about how you did that when you bought a share of, I think, an Apple or something like that, though?
Well, yeah, and at that time, this was about 2008. I sold it because I couldn't keep up with the loss. It did lose a little bit too. So rather than have to report it, I liquidated everything and I came out even Steven.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just going to mention though, if you were going to go to Charles Schwab tomorrow, what stocks would you pick?
Well,
that would be high turn.
Well, my stand bias has always been a joke people used to say basically around here. You go to Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King so much. Are you sure you don't own stock in them? Well,
Yeah.
basically, I did own a lot of stock in Wendy's, 10 shares. And I would buy McDonald's stock if I had the chance, as well as Burger King.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the reason I like Wendy's has always been stable. They pay a 10% dividend. They're known as an equity stock. So even if the stock doesn't go up, you get 10% dividend at the end of the year, which is better than what you can get from the bank and through treasury bonds right now.
What about what's going on today with the coronavirus? How would you rate stock of, let's say, the people that make the gloves, and also Pfizer or Moderna?
Well, I think basically, those are steady stocks like Wendy's. People during this crisis are going to need the mask, they're going to need the gloves, they're going to need but the one thing about about pharmaceutical stocks, so you have to remember that the quarterly. So basically, what I'm trying to say is basically, like for example, if you buy it now, by the time summer comes, you're going to get a nice big growth.
Mm-hmm.
But then basically everyone sells off in September, and then it goes down again. So what happens if you buy it after August? You're going to have to wait all the way until next July comes before you
okay. Well, that's fair enough. I don't know if the virus is going to be tamed by Labor Day, but
I don't think so, because I just heard.
Sound like it.
I just heard today Biden administration saying that kids are not going to get vaccinated until late August, and even like a music group, the biggest event is a state fair coming up. So I wonder if there's going to be Summerfest this year myself.
Or the Tokyo Olympics.
Exactly, right, exactly.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And that.
What international stock would you consider buying?
Oh, well, basically Alcoa, Ford. I've always bought those. Have always been good.
Mm-hmm.
And basically
not Mercedes-Benz.
Well, Mercedes-Benz is good. It's just basically, though, I try to stay away from stock prices that are too high. That's why I haven't really bought a lot of McDonald's. I mean, I tend to buy stocks around about the $5 to $15 range. I tend to buy those. I don't like these $55 or $1,000 stocks. I'm a little bit.
I don't know what the market is on Tesla.
Well, Tesla's up at 300.
Oh,
and
wow.
they've been steady, but again, my personal philosophy is I stay in a $5 or $15 range, because if I want to sell the stock, basically I can sell it at market value easier than I can say a stock that's 350 or 1,000, because then. And the other thing with the stocks I buy, you don't have to have a hand of stock. So basically, hand of stock is 100 stocks. So some companies, if you buy a stock, you can only sell it if you can get a hand together, 100 stock, and that can be difficult, because then you take a little thing about. That's why the 5 and 15, you don't have to worry about getting a hand, because the broker can always figure out a way how to make a hand, and that's why I've always gone through Scottrade, and I'm willing to give TD Ameritrade a try soon, once I can afford to get back in, and stuff like that.
Now, utility stocks, what would you recommend on that?
Well, I mean, like this fracking pipeline stock, that was a good stock until the executive order, but I still like to see how they're doing basically about a month after this, and if they're still doing steady up a month after that, I'd be interested in seeing but taking chance and see how well they do, because I buy for equity and growth. I buy, but I don't want something that's super high and then going to fizzle out, like possibly what may happen with this GameStop stuff. I want something that's steady, but I don't want something that's, if stock's going to be 3%, I'll buy a savings bond. I expect at least a 20% growth rate. Or why are you investing in stocks?
Well, now you can figure what's pretty active, though, for return of investment by using the computer today, right?
Yes, and that's what I do. I use the stock calculator, stock database, and also stock filter to figure out which stocks meet a certain criteria that I use
Yeah.
to select it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, and there's lots of others on the horizon that we haven't even thought about for tomorrow that may come to fruition. So like who knows a month from now what's going to be hot on the market.
Well, right, and that's the thing where right now I don't hold any stock, but I mean, when I do get in, I'm going to get in more with equity first, like Wendys,
Yeah.
Alcoa, Ford, basically Cooper Tire. Those are all equity stocks because I know basically, regardless of the stock price,
Yeah.
I'm always going to get this 10% dividend, so I can live with the gyrations. But again, please don't buy on margin. And to the people, participating in this day trading with this game stock, like this, trying to do the rocket launch. Pretty soon the rocket's going to run out of fuel.
Yeah.
And
now, is there a lot of still insider trading among the Congress people? They know a little bit ahead of time.
Well, the rules have been tightened, so basically, that shouldn't exist anymore because basically, with computer monitoring, computer tracking, that in the old paper days, maybe, but right now, because everything you do is on computer log, so even down to the millisecond is when you execute your trade.
And how long has that been? What year did that change?
Oh, about the late 90s.
Late 90s.
Yeah, because
because there's some people who might want to re-enter the market and probably our old school thinking that the paper chase is still there, but it's not.
No. Yeah. And the thing is, what happens when you do set up a stock account, the way it works is basically, it's not like the old brokerage where you give your money to the old brokerage, they hold on to it, and you may have to beg to get it back. A lot of brokerage firms, like I remember Scottrade, and now that Scottrade's merged with TD Ameritrade, you had a brokerage account, but you also had a bank account. So basically, you could actually have a card where you can pull it out of the ATM, or you could, or like I used to do before I had credit, before I used debit cards, I call an office in St. Louis and have them cut me a check and send it to me. And the thing is, what happens, since I invested without margin, I didn't have to worry about a margin call. So basically, when I had a dividend, when the stock went up so much, I'd sell part of it, put in cash and keep it in there. But the thing is, when you do keep it in your stock account, you're not taxed for capital gains because basically you haven't pulled it. You only tax for capital gains for what you pull out. So basically, if you're gonna do the stock market and you're gonna have a lot in there, just pull what you need, because basically if you try to pull out everything to buy that Ferrari, you're gonna get socked with 30 to 50% capital gains, rather than just buying that Chevy or Ford, like that though. If you buy the Chevy or Ford, you're not going to have to pay. You probably won't have to pay capital gains because it's probably below the limit of the luxury tax.
Yeah, well, I've learned to buy used. Anyway.
Exactly. Well, nothing. Good used car too. Like that's all. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, like a lot of people.
Well, with all the what I call misrepresentation of Car Shield, I'm sure it's still a good stock for those people who still engage with that thought that it's going to save you money. You might as well make money on the propaganda of saving money.
Well, that's the thing about when you look at a company like for example, like Ron mentioned, Car Shield. There's other car maintenance insurance companies, but the problem is what you have to look at: what state do you live in?
Yeah,
because like in Lon's case, Lon had Car Shield, and Car Shield has a different subsidiary that manages contracts in Wisconsin and Texas and California. So I think Wisconsin's lumped in. So basically, what you hear in the commercial may not be the same type of representation. You got to find out, okay, who's the Car Shield administrator for your state, because depending on who that is, you may be happy, you may not, and And it's the same thing basically with other businesses. I mean, but normally that's because when other businesses go outside the U.S. to other countries, they have to set up separate corporate entities to get around provincial laws. But in the U.S., it's that way too now. It's not along different type. So you need to look at who's actually going to be administrators. Is it going to be a subsidiary of this, like what Lon ran into, or is it actually going to be the actual car shield?
Yeah,
And that's a big difference. So it's more than it's more than just reading the fine print. It's actually doing your research. Actually asking the question. Okay, who actually? And don't accept when someone says, "Oh, we have offices in Wisconsin." Okay, fine. You have okay. Who's the actual company that administrates this? This company A or a subsidiary company? XYZ. Who administrates this? And that's.
Since the airlines have taken a dip, do you think it's wise to invest, hopingly that it might take off again?
Well, if you're willing to stay long.
Yeah, really.
Now let me give you an example.
Southwest.
Let me give you an example. In 2008, when the crash occurred, I will say crash. Basically this was the Bush-McCain campaign, and the auto companies were begging for money for basically the government, and to some, they may find this hard to believe, but Ford stock was down to $1.25 a share.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who bought 100 shares of Ford stock at $1.25 a share?
You did.
I did. And what happened was basically, what happens, a friend of mine, a mutual friend of mine, Lon and I know, he was an investor too. He likes to invest a different strategy, but he said, well, why don't you buy more? You're being chicken. Why don't you buy more? I wish I would have listened to him and bought more, because by July, it went up to $9 a share. So basically, I had quite a bit, and that though, and stuff, and that. So
excuse me for a second.
yeah, and I'll turn this. And what happened was, so I had like about $1,000. Or are you okay?
Hello.
Had $1,000 that year, and but the only thing is, what happened was in that year also the place I was living in a condo. And so I had to cash out, and when I cashed out, basically I had to sell at below market value to get the cash value needed to make preparations to move to someplace else when my place went condo. And luckily I had that savings, because basically but here's the reason why I bought Ford stock at $1.25 a share. GM and Chrysler were all accepting the government money, and GM had some great cars. They had this one convertible they made, this one, in 2008, they no longer sell. And what happens under the government money, they had to cut all these new research and development. Saturn disappeared, other thing. But I thought, since Ford wasn't taking the government money that they had prepared ahead, and that they'd be as strong a company in the end. And I was right. I mean, Ford is up there about $15 a share. And I still buy it today like that, though. See, the thing is, this is a case where you have to trust in the company. During a bad time, you have to say, well, what's the issue with the company? So that's why I bought Ford stock like that, though. Well, now, Lon, just to give you an example, like with cars, though. Now, there's a rule that many people probably aren't aware of about with used cars. The 20-year rule.
Yeah.
For emission. So,
Yeah.
So some of you who may be thinking about buying a new car, when you buy a new car in Wisconsin, you have to put $900 to make sure your car passes emission and everything else.
If it doesn't pass.
If it doesn't pass emission,
that's every other year.
Right, and you got to put every other year, but you got to put this $900 in if it doesn't pass, and then they'll give you one waiver, and then you have to pay all this other money to make it pass. Now, there's a rule that many states have. I don't think in California, I think it's different, but in many states, if you buy a car that's 20 years old, you don't have to take it for emissions, and you just pay the driver's license fee.
95 and older.
Yes, 95, and so basically, like now it'd be up to 1999. So basically, if you could find a 99 car, I mean, it's not going to have the computer, it's not going to have Google, not going to. But basically, you have basic transportation. You won't have to worry about this $900 fee, and you also will be able to get lower insurance because you don't have to insure all this technical equipment, and that.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Oh, and what's critical about this is for those people who are financing these big SUVs and everything else, really, I mean, some of the prices are just outlandish. And that money, instead of going to a car payment, could go to your retirement.
Exactly.
In other words, be smart enough to pay yourself.
Yes.
In the long run first. Yeah. And nobody really cares about, how you arrive at your destination to the point where, unless it's some kind of black tie affair, and generally speaking, for most of us today that are sheltering in place, it's really going to the food store and getting essentials anyway.
Exactly.
And usually that's now the dollar store. Right. And I'm sure that the management couldn't care less exactly how you arrive or depart.
Right. And for Lon and I, we live in two different buildings. My building happens to be closer to Dollar General.
But other people do too.
Right. So I mean, basically between us, it's Piggly Wiggly or Dollar General. And a lot of times for many people in my building and Lon's building, it's Dollar General because basically it's closer and they have everything. So, and for us, for when people walk, like in my building over there, it's still closer, especially during the winter. We're trying to get through the snow. But the general store like Dollar General or basically Piggly Wiggly, that's what most people are doing, so.
Well, yes. They're more or less forced to do that unless you're actually working at a 9-to-5 job or 5-to-9 job, where it's changed in this country in the last year that a status symbol is really your health.
Right,
not what you drive.
Right, exactly. The seven goals of yuppie are no more.
Right, yeah, and unfortunately, we may see a long time before we get back to some kind of hallelujah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like this. Just last week, Arby's in our area opened up their dining room, and now McDonald's still has only takeout. They did have some dining. Wendy's still hasn't opened a dining room. Chick-fil-A, Burger King, So unless you have a car, you can't order stuff unless you want to pay atrocious prices for these delivery services.
Right, tipping is involved.
Yeah.
Nothing's free exactly.
Exactly.
Even if they say so.
Yeah.
You feel obligated.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's it.
And these are things that people should be aware of and cautious of. Of course, everybody's situation is different, and I think it's going to require a lot of us who were undisciplined to become very disciplined in the future.
Oh, exactly. And and the thing about getting an older car, like Ron said, the 7 goals of yuppiedom are no more. Like, just to give an example, when I started my career as a medical researcher, when I went to my interview in Milwaukee, I drove to my interview in a 77 Grand Marquis. It was 1987.
Mm-hmm.
And the Grand Marquis had seen its use. It was not perfectly pristine, but it got me there, got me the job.
Yeah.
And I lived there for many years until I bought my first Lincoln. And,
right. Or you can think of it another way with the tollways today. You're paying dearly unless you have a so-called I-pass.
Right.
And the days of the toll booth are not going to go away exactly, but that you're going to be tolled anyway.
Exactly. That's it.
And that adds to the cost of maintaining a car to be on the road to pay the tollway, which doesn't seem to go another way either. So, one should be thinking about the cost of maintaining the car, not just fueling the car.
Like that, and just to give you an example, Lon's probably more familiar with this than I am. On WBBM, they have one
Radio Chicago.
They have one young woman who gives the traffic report, and she's very good at telling the alternates for those of us who aren't familiar with the ultimate ways around the Kennedy, the Edens, but even if you take the ultimate ways, the thing about maintenance still comes in, because you may get on an alternate route that has like a Chuck Hole City, so you may need to sit, but basically, even in Milwaukee, you have to know that, but more so on BBM, it's always like, well, there's a Gapers block or something that you got to take this, take Tui, or go by Lawrence, or and
instead of sitting there
exactly
like a zombie.
Yes.
Oh, geez, maybe I should wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Please exit soon. And find yourself a different path of righteousness.
Yeah, because what I always found the hardest part about getting around Chicago is when you get on the west side of O'Hare.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, you could take 83 up to Kenosha County, but I found out 83 in Illinois doesn't connect up to Kenosha County. You have to take
gotta go through several suburbs just to get through that point.
Right, exactly. So people end up going back and forth
do a map suite. Before you depart, if you're unfamiliar with the surroundings of suburban XYZ.
Exactly.
And the potholes haven't been as bad in the last year or two as it had been previously, but that can change too.
Right, exactly. That's it.
You don't need shock absorber hell with the pricing either. And I would go shopping at different garages for competitive bidding.
Yes.
Because the way garages operate today, they're out for the top dollar that they can get out of you.
Oh, sure.
Even if you have CarShield.
Yeah. Well, also, here's another thing I have friends ask me about, because even though I transitioned from male to female, I still have women friends ask me, say, well, can you call the car price for me, because you still know how to talk like a guy, so I won't get overcharged? Because there is a case where they will try to overcharge women and men if they think you don't know about your car like that. And I'm sure both of us have been through that song.
Well, I just restored a car, and I'm willing to write a book with my associate here called 9 Mechanics Later.
That'd be a good book. We could do that on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. That'd be
believe me, the reality of this is unbelievable. But unfortunately, if you know better and know where to get your parts for restoration, let's say, you're going to be saving some money in the long haul.
Oh, exactly.
Instead of those huge car payments that are relentless, and then your insurance, is adjusted that way too, where since you haven't paid it off, they're taking a higher risk, and that means a higher premium for you to pay in the meantime. And it's all calculated against you, not in your favor.
Right. And the thing is, you have to remember now, most people now actually, when they get a car, they don't actually own the car, they lease it.
Yeah.
So when you lease it, the insurance company adds another sandwich to the sandwich that you're already paying for. So you may think, well, oh, great, my friend's paying, $80 a month on insurance. Well, that's because they own the car. But when you lease the car, you'll find out based upon what your lease is and how much stuff you have on there, your insurance may go up to $250 is equal to your car payment, even though you are a good driver, you haven't driven drunk, you haven't done, you've done all the right things, but it's because of all this excess liability, because of the electronics and everything else. And that's where, you get an older car, you can negotiate on the insurance,
Well, these are just some of the everyday tips that we're discussing, for people who shelter in place and get out once in a while and then have a breakdown, and it gets to be mass confusion. What do I do and where do I turn?
Okay, now let's go to the thing about education. Like when you were in school and when I was in school, they had these auditorium lectures where you'd have like 200 students in a lecture.
Some, yeah.
Now what happens, I've heard that, when they do these Zoom education things for students like that, like 50 students on the Zoom or 200 students, can you just imagine how chaotic that has to be to do this?
Well, some of these educational assistants to these professors know how to pass out the papers and do attendance and so forth, so they cover themselves pretty well with it. But if it gets involved where you need an after class question answered, you have to make an appointment with the instructors usually, and it's like his valuable time. Well, it's not just his time, it's your time as well.
Right, because
in my case, when you get to be my age, it's father's time.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest thief in this whole thing for any of us. Time does not wait, and father time rules. So, I would be very cautious as to what I select in the future for classroom work. If it's going to be an auditorium world, maybe you ought to change and do another subject.
Exactly.
Or find another place to take the course.
Right. Well, just to give an example, I graduated university both ways, traditional, like on, as well as online. But when we went online at University of Phoenix, we actually we didn't call it the pod structure then, but we did have a pod. We had like about 10 or 15 people per class, and text-based, and it wasn't like this giant Zoom thing where you have 35 people, 45 people trying to say, hey, I got a question, and it was, but when I think about these little kids going in these Zoom classes and like their parents trying to act as assistant teacher doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, we met one person at one gift shop, and she's telling us about, luckily her older daughter is an A student and basically can adapt easily, but she's worried about her younger kids. And studies have shown younger kids on this Zoom thing have had a very high failure rate. I still think pods are a great idea. Neighborhoods to do pods. Hire a private teacher, have her teach like a one-room schoolhouse of 10 or 15 kids. During this pandemic, or homeschool.
Yeah. Well, again, the unions haven't come out and said that might be a good thing.
Yes.
And of course, we await tomorrow with Chicago Public Schools.
Yes.
As to what the big decision is going to be,
whether strike or not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, the student is left outside the realm anyway.
Right.
And really, it's not just Chicago, but other cities are involved with all kinds of academic challenges today.
Oh, sure.
That we never even imagined a year ago.
No.
When you stop to think about a year ago.
And just to close out the program, I like to just pose a question to Lon, and both of us will answer part. When we get through this pandemic thing and whatever, and we start living this new normal, will we ever get back to the old normal, like on the metro trains, where people are squished in like sardines and everything else, or basically you go to a coffee shop in Evanston and you're actually drinking your coffee like this because you don't have enough room to put your elbows out? Do you think we'll ever return to those days?
Well, I certainly hope so by October. I tell you, I don't know how much more I could take of this either. One has to be cautious. There's no doubt about it. But, I feel a sense of maybe a little bit more freedom towards the fall when they get all this inoculation.
Yes.
But there are people who still will not want to get inoculated.
Exactly.
I met them today already. I'm not getting a shot. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that.
Exactly. I have friends too that said the same thing.
Yeah. So, you have to live with these people who are diehards.
Well,
you know, that beckons back to 1955 with the polio shot thing too.
Exactly.
It took a while to get that shakeout.
Yeah. Well, now, see, when the polio shot came out, my parents were just the opposite. As soon as it came out, because my dad had polio, my sister had the first version of the shot, which I think was actually the needle.
Yeah.
The live, and I'm not sure. I either had what was it, the gumdrop or the actual shot. I'm not sure because it's early '60s. It was,
well, they also had the oral vaccine later.
Right, so I think I might have probably had the shot like that rather than. But you know, my parents wanted us to get. We got it right away. But just to give an example of this pandemic, like even in Evanston, in May of 2007, after 20 years in Evanston, Barnes and Noble closed, and it's going to become part of Northwestern medical offices. To many Northwestern students, that was a haven, and to many of us coming to Evanston, that was a haven because it allowed you to simulate at a slower pace than what you would otherwise. And that, to some Evanstonians, they considered basically a freeloader place, but basically, I don't think that was, you know. But a lot of Northwestern students did call Barnes and Noble on Church Street home, and it was a very cozy place to go to.
Well, again, libraries have limited hours today too.
Yeah, and then
up and down the North Shore. So you know, if you're looking for a space, you know, it's difficult today, and you're going to have to size it up the way you see yourself, time and place, and
exactly. So you know, and the other thing though is basically it's just nothing in the libraries. You can't talk in the library. Most libraries go. So Barnes and Noble, you could have a cup of coffee, talk, use your computer, and that's it.
Yeah, well, hopefully things will change for the better. I'm trying to be optimistic by the fall.
That's what I'm hoping too. So what I'm hoping basically by September, all of us can go back to Wendys and Burger King, McDonald's, and enjoy a nice breakfast in the dining room, not from our cars. I mean, I think many of us are sick of eating through drive-through.
Yeah. I even opt for Chinese restaurants that are open,
there you
even
go.
if I have to wear gloves.
Exactly. So, well, let us know what you think. Our program site is Ideas with Diana on Twitter, and also Diana1A on Twitter.
And have a good Groundhog Day.
Definitely.
I'm sure
definitely
that he will be seeing his shadow.
So that means what? 6
more weeks.
A winter. Okay. Well,
if it's anything like today and tomorrow in the East Coast, God help us all.
Yeah. So be prepared. You're having a storm and nor'easter at the same time. So like that. Well, this has been Ideas with Diana, and I'd like to thank you for watching. All right, Lon, I think we switched.